powerful built-in frameworks as you can to deliver rich functionality rather than writing your own duplicate frameworks. And here are some of the frameworks available to your app on iOS, but there are many, many more within the SDK. These frameworks are what we use to develop iOS itself and what we use for built-in apps like Safari, Mail, Photos, and more. These are mature, stable, hardware accelerated. They're localized and accessible, so using them means your app will be these things too. Lastly, optimizing your app means building something that's made specifically for iOS and targeted at the iPhone or iPad, rather than developing something that's cross-platform and lowest common denominator. Now here's a great example of an app designed specifically for iPad. It's Infinity Blade by Chair Entertainment Group. It has incredible gameplay, unbelievable performance, and stunning high-res graphics. This is an app that's only possible because it was developed for iPad. Here's another example of an app designed specifically for iPad. This is Inkling, an interactive textbook app that offers students interactivity, social collaboration, tutorials and quizzes, and simple ease of use only possible on iPad. And then there's The Elements by Theodore Gray, an interactive periodic table of the elements textbook offering content not previously available in digital form. This app was meant for iPad. So the challenge is this: be sure to optimize your app in all of the ways we just mentioned. Avoid just building something and hoping it's good enough. Now, on to connected. Great iPhone and iPad apps are connected, and there are 3 aspects to this. The first is to ensure that your app works well with other apps. If your app displays a telephone number, people should be able to tap that number and initiate a phone call if they're on iPhone. If your app displays a web address, people should be able to view that content within your app using a UI web view, or be automatically sent to Safari to browse the content there. And the same concept applies to street addresses and other location information. Either display this information within your app using MapKit, or allow people to switch out to the Maps app. The second aspect of connectedness is to ensure that where appropriate, your app is connected with the personal information available on the user's device. Contacts, photos, and more can be used by your app, making it far more integrated and personal. And the third aspect of being connected, and the focal point for this section of the presentation, is that your app can reach out beyond itself to add more value for people. For example, there are millions of iPhones out there that your app can connect to. Here's the Starbucks app. It looks great and it's super easy to use. Among other things, it lets you create your favorite Starbucks drink, so that when your colleague, friend, or family member is making a Starbucks run, you can connect to their iPhone and send them your drink order. This is a simple example of how to connect with others for a very practical reason, and it's a clever way of getting people to notice and remember your app. Could your app benefit from being able to do a digital handshake and exchange information this way? Here's iPad to iPad. I mentioned this app before. It's Scrabble from Electronic Arts, but it's a great example not only of innovation, but of connectedness between iPads via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi to really enhance the gameplay. Connecting your app on iPhone with a companion app on macOS 10 can also add lots of value for people. Here's Billings Touch by Market Circle. It's a very capable time tracking app for anyone who wants to manage billing against projects or clients. On its own, it's really great. But combined with a companion app on the Mac called Billings macOS 10, means people can have data automatically synced so that they can take advantage of the power of the desktop to, for example, design and print an invoice. And a similar example, this time between iPhone, iPad, and the Mac, is Things by Cultured Code, a very flexible, really well-designed GTD, Getting Things Done To-Do Manager app, which automatically synchronizes tasks and projects between these devices directly, providing users with excellent functionality and mobility. This is definitely an example worth following. And this is SkyGrid, a great app with consistently high App Store ratings that keeps people up to date on the things that they care about. This app on iPhone and iPad is a great example of how reaching out beyond the device can add lots of value for users. And the last example is Flightboard by Ben Kazaz, an app that provides flight departure and arrival information using a really accurate reproduction of a flight board. It's a simple, extremely well-done example of an app that reaches out beyond the device to connect with more information of value to users. That's connected. Now, number 5. Great iPhone and iPad apps are accessible. Building accessibility into your app means that everyone will be able to use it, which is important whether your app is for in-house use by employees or for anyone in the App Store. Now, here are some interesting stats for the US that are likely similar to the rest of the world. First of all, 10 million people are visually impaired. 31 million people are hearing impaired. And some 12 million have a learning disability. For example, they might have dyslexia and so will misinterpret what they see on the screen in your app. So, all told, that's 1 in 5 users, or 1 in 5 employees, or 1 in 5 of your customers. Basically, 50 million people who won't be able to use your app at all, or who will have difficulty using it unless you make it accessible. The good news is that accessibility is built into iOS and integrated into numerous frameworks, including UIKit, for example. Your job is to simply follow the documentation and add accessibility wherever you can to your app. And in return, the accessibility framework will enable powerful new capabilities in your app, including VoiceOver and much more. Great iPhone and iPad apps are accessible so that everyone can use them. Great iPhone and iPad apps are localized. It's more important than ever for your app to be usable by people everywhere, since the App Store is now in more than 90 countries. We live in a global village with many, many languages being spoken in each country. Reaching all of these people in their language of choice is a great way to make sure that your app has as broad a reach as possible. So localize your UI for as many languages as possible. Here's Things for iPhone by Cultured Code, available in English, German, and French, and even more languages. Localization can be restricted to the basic UI of your app, but can extend to all of your content too, if that makes sense. Every little bit helps, and iOS makes it easy to include all of the translations within the same binary, so that there's still only one app that users need to download. And finally, great iPhone and iPad apps are designed. This means focusing on delivering the optimal interaction design, meaning how the app works and what happens when things are tapped. And focusing on a strong visual design, meaning how the app looks and presents information. Let's begin with a great quote by Adam Engst. He says, "The iPad becomes the app you're using. Switch to another app, and the iPad becomes that app. If that's not magic, I don't know what is." I mean, I love this quote because it's been my own experience and it provides a great backdrop for a discussion on design. Now, here are a few examples that illustrate this point. Here's Maps on iPad. iPad becomes a digital map. Here's Notes on iPad. iPad becomes a classic paper notepad. Here's Calendar app. iPad becomes a daytimer. Here's Contacts. iPad becomes an address book. Notice there's no menu bar, no windowing system, no file system, or any of the encumbrances of a traditional computing experience. The only thing that matters is the app that's running. This is NPR, National Public Radio for iPad. It combines their radio broadcasts with their excellent online content. iPad becomes the best NPR experience ever. And here's a point-of-sale system called Square for iPhone and iPad that's really attractive, easy to use, and allows anyone to take credit card payments. Totally transformative for small business. iPad becomes a point-of-sale system. Here's Marvel Comics, a fantastic digital comic reading experience on iPad. iPad becomes a comic book. And here's Amplitube Fender by Agile Partners. iPad becomes a Fender guitar amp and effects modeler. How beautiful is that? And so, as you can see, each app takes over the iPad screen and the device becomes your app. It becomes whatever you want it to be. This is why design matters so much. It's vital that your app works exactly as users would expect it to, and that it has the attention to detail and polish needed to surprise and delight. These are the 7 ingredients of great iPhone and iPad apps. So there you go. There are definitely many more app examples I could have talked about, since there are lots of really great apps on the App Store. And there are probably other valuable ingredients we could discuss too. But the ones I've covered here are the ones you should begin incorporating into your app today. I look forward to seeing the next great version of your app and hearing about any questions you have and about your experience developing for iOS.